The ice in my glass cracked when her grip shifted, just a little, barely a millimeter. But I felt it. I didn't look at her right away. I kept my eyes on the crowd at the penthouse, on the sea of silk dresses and tailored tuxedos, on the people who thought tonight was the pinnacle of Manhattan's social calendar. They were all wrong. It was the beginning of a funeral. Ethan, Victoria murmured, her voice low, so only I could hear over the string quartet. He's here. I finally turned my head. Julian Vance stood in the doorway like he owned the place. Same dark hair, same easy smile, same fucking expensive watch I'd seen in old photos. He looked around, soaking in the attention, then zeroed in on us. On her. Julian, I said flatly, didn't expect you to crawl out of whatever hole you've been hiding in. Victoria's nails dug into my arm through the suit jacket. Don't. Julian strolled over, ignoring me entirely. He leaned in and kissed Victoria's cheek. She didn't pull away. My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned a long time ago that anger is a tell, and I don't give tells. Torai, Julian said smoothly, you look incredible, though I expected nothing less. Julian, Victoria breathed. Her voice did something weird when she said his name, like it belonged to him more than it belonged to her. I stepped back half a pace, just enough to break their little bubble. Congratulations. You made it to the party. Now, if you'll excuse us. Actually, Victoria cut in, her tone shifting to that CEO cadence she used in boardrooms. I'd like Julian to stay. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyes weren't on me. They were locked on him. And there it was, the crack in the foundation I'd spent 3 years building. Stay? I repeated. For what? The part where we toast our future? Or the part where you explain why your ex-boyfriend is crashing our engagement party? She hesitated. That was all I needed. Sophie, Victoria's assistant, appeared at my elbow like a nervous shadow. Mr. Cole, the catering manager needs to confirm the wine for the toast. Not now. Sophie, Victoria snapped, not looking away from Julian. Julian grinned. Relax. Torai, it's fine. I'm just here to say congratulations, and maybe remind you of a few things you've forgotten. I laughed once, sharp and humorless, like how to bankrupt a startup, or how to disappear when the creditors come knocking. Victoria whipped her head toward me. That's enough. Ethan, is it? I asked, because from where I'm standing, you're the one who invited a ghost to a wedding rehearsal. Tell me, Victoria, did you clear this with your board? Or just with your memory lane? Julian's smile didn't falter. Still the charming one. Aren't you, Cole? No wonder she kept me as a secret. Kept you? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. She didn't keep you. She buried you. And if you're not careful, I'll dig the hole deeper. Victoria grabbed my wrist. Hard. Stop it. Both of you. The music dipped lower. People were starting to notice. I could feel their eyes. Marcus, my father, watching from across the room with that unreadable stare. Elena, my soul, already on her phone, probably moving assets. And the rest of them, sipping champagne while waiting for the show to start. Fine, I said quietly, but this conversation isn't over. Julian raised an eyebrow, looking forward to it. He walked off toward the bar. Victoria exhaled shakily. I pulled my wrist free. You knew this would happen. I said, I didn't think he'd actually come. She whispered, not until yesterday. He called, said he wanted to see me one last time before I made the biggest mistake of my life. I stared at her. And you believed him? I didn't. I don't know what I believe anymore. She admitted her composure was slipping. And I hated that I noticed. Hated that some small, stupid part of me still wanted to reach out and steady her. Ethan, please, just get through tonight. For us. For us? I echoed. Or for you, before she could answer. The event coordinator tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, Ms. Sterling would like to say a few words. Victoria stiffened. I offered my hand automatically, old habit, and she took it. Her palm was cold and damp. We walked to the raised platform by the champagne tower. Cameras flashed. I kept my smile in place. The one I'd practiced for investor meetings and hostile takeovers. It didn't reach my eyes. She leaned into the mic. Thank you all for being here. When I started Sterling Global 5 years ago, I never imagined I'd be standing here tonight, celebrating not just a company's success, but a partnership that changed my life. Partnership, not love, not future. Partnership. I filed that away. Ethan, she continued, turning to me, you've been my anchor, my strategist, my safest bet. Safe. There was again. But lately I've realized that sometimes the safest bet isn't the right one. The room went quiet. I didn't move, didn't blink. I've spent years trying to outrun my past, she said, voice trembling now, trying to prove I could build something clean, something new. But the past has a way of finding you, of reminding you who you really are. She looked past me, at Julian, who was now leaning against the bar, glass raised in mock salute. Tonight, Victoria said, and I knew before the words left her mouth. Tonight, I realized I never stopped loving him. Julian, I choose you. Silence, then a collective intake of breath. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered. I didn't move, didn't react. I just looked at her, at the woman I'd funded, defended, loved in the quiet, undramatic ways that apparently didn't count. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him. Julian pushed off a bar and walked toward us. Slow, deliberate, victorious. I stepped forward, not away, took the mic from her numb fingers. The room held its breath. I've been told I have a talent for exits, I said evenly. So here's one last lesson for the crowd. Never confuse loyalty with leverage. And never, ever, let someone else hold your equity. I placed a velvet ring box on the podium. Open. The diamond caught the light, cold and sharp. Then I handed the mic back to her. Enjoy your closure, I said softly, so only she could hear. It cost you everything. I walked off the stage, past Marcus, who gave me a single nod, approval, maybe, or just recognition. Past Elena, who fell into step beside me without a word. Past Julian, who actually had the balls to smirk. Cole, he called after me. I stopped, turned. You and the girl, I said, but she comes with a debt you can't pay. Then I kept walking, out of the penthouse, into the elevator, down to the garage. Elena didn't speak until we were in the car. Pull the investors? She asked, starting the engine. I watched the city blur past the tinted windows. All of them, every single one. And Elena? Yeah, boss. Freeze the Hamptons account. Cancel the credit lines. And give me a list of every vendor tied to Sterling Global. We're going scorched earth. She glanced at me. You sure? I thought about Victoria's voice, saying my name like it meant nothing. Thought about Julian's hand on her waist. Thought about 3 years of dinners, late-night strategy sessions, and the way she'd fall asleep against my shoulder on red-eye flights. I've never been sure of anything. I said. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Ethan, please, let's talk. I blocked her number. Then I opened the window and let the wind hit my face. It tasted like smoke and rain, and the end of something I'd never get back. Good. Let her choke on her choice. I was done saving people who didn't want to be saved. The markets opened at 9:30. I was already 3 coffees deep and halfway through my first call. Morning, Arthur, I said, leaning back in my leather chair. The office was silent, except for Elena's keyboard clicking from the adjoining room. How's the weather in Greenwich? Arthur Pritchard, head of Pritchard Capital, didn't bother with pleasantries. Ethan, what the hell is going on with Sterling? My analysts are screaming about a 20% dip in pre-market. There's been a change in leadership, I said, spinning a pen between my fingers. Effective last night. Change? Victoria Sterling is Sterling. Everyone knows that. Everyone also knows she chose her ex-boyfriend over her fiancé at their engagement party, in front of half of Manhattan, including me. I let that hang. I don't invest in companies with unstable executive decisions. You know my rules. Atsuasite. I could picture him rubbing his temples. The morning light hitting his mahogany desk. This is reactionary. Ethan, the numbers still look solid. The numbers look solid because I made them solid, and I'm pulling our stake. All of it, by close of business. Silence. Then you're serious. Dead serious. Send the paperwork to Elena. I want the funds reallocated to the Bearing account by Monday. I hung up before he could argue. Elena poked her head in. Arthur's going to be a problem, she said. Arthur will do what his LPs tell him to do, and his LPs listen to me. I checked my watch. Next call, Marcus. She nodded and disappeared. I dialed my father. He picked up on the second ring. Son, he said, no greeting. Just that, Dad. Sterling's cratering. I'm pulling the firm's capital. About time. I saw the clip on CNBC this morning. Sloppy move on her part. Emotional decisions ruin balance sheets. She didn't just make an emotional decision. She made a public one. I paused. You taught me that. I taught you not to get attached to assets that devalue overnight. Looks like you finally listened. A beat. How are you holding up? It was the closest he'd ever come to asking if I was okay. I appreciated the effort. I'm fine. Busy. Good. Keep busy. Feelings are for people who can afford them. You're not there yet. He hung up. Elena knocked once and entered with a tablet. We got 7 more calls lined up. Also, Sophie Chen's been blowing up your secure line. I raised an eyebrow. Sophie? Victoria's lapdog? Apparently, she's developed a conscience. Or a survival instinct. Elena set the tablet down. Want me to ignore her? Patch her through. I sat up. Let's see what she wants. 2 rings. Then, Mr. Cole? Oh, thank God. I shouldn't be calling. But, spit it out. Sophie, it's Ms. Sterling. She's not handling this well. She's in her office. Hasn't left since last night. Julian's with her. And he's moving fast. Accessing files. Logging into the secure servers. He doesn't have clearance. I cut in. He does now. She gave him interim advisory status last night. Signed the papers herself. Sophie's voice dropped. And Mr. Cole? There's something else. The Hamptons house. The security feed. I pulled it. They've been there together. Multiple times. Even when she told you she was in Boston for the board retreat. I leaned forward. Elbows on the desk. Dates. Last Tuesday. Thursday. And the night before the party. From 8 p.m. until 4 a.m. Last Tuesday. That was the night she called me from Boston. Voice hushed, saying she missed me. I'd stayed up late modeling a new acquisition strategy for Sterling's European expansion, while she was 30 miles away. In our bed, with him. Anything else? My voice was level, cold. Julian transferred funds. Small ones. At first. But they add up to an offshore account in Malta. I think he's setting up an exit. Send me the files. All of them. I paused. Why are you telling me this? Sophie? A long silence. Then, because I've worked for Ms. Sterling for 4 years, and I've never seen her this reckless, and because Julian Vance is a con artist. Everyone knows it except her. If he sinks the company, I'm out of a job, and I'd rather jump ship before it hits the iceberg. Smart. I ended the call and looked at Elena. Get legal on the line. I want a freeze on all Sterling-related transfers originating from Julian Vance's access points. Use the clause in the investor agreement. Section 12B. Breach of fiduciary duty. Elena's eyes widened slightly. That'll trigger a full audit. It'll tank the stock even further. Exactly. I stood, walking to the window. The city was gray. Overcast. Fitting. Call Victoria. Put on speaker. Elena dialed. It rang 6 times before she picked up. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. Ethan? Victoria. I kept my tone flat. I'm assuming you're aware that your new strategic advisor is funneling company funds to a Maltese bank account. Silence. Then what? That's not possible. Julian wouldn't. He would. He has. And you handed him the keys. I heard movement on her end. Maybe her standing up. Check your email. Victoria. Sophie sent the evidence, along with the security footage from a Hamptons house. Last Tuesday, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Ring any bells? A sharp intake of breath. You had me followed? I didn't need to follow you. You told me where you were. You lied. I paused. But that's not even the worst part, is it? The worst part is that you looked me in the eye and told me you loved me while you were sleeping with him. Ethan, please, it wasn't like that. It was closure. I thought if I slept with him one last time, I could move on. With you, I laughed. Short, bitter. Closure? You don't fuck your ex for closure. Victoria, you fuck him because you still want him. And then you humiliate the man who's been funding your empire for 3 years because you're too cowardly to admit you made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. She whispered. No, you meant to choose him. Hurting me was just collateral damage. I heard Julian's voice in the background, muffled but distinct. Who is it? Tell him to back off. Victoria covered the receiver. I could hear the strain in her voice when she came back on. Julian says this is harassment. Tell Julian he has until 5 p.m. to clear out his desk. And if I see one more unauthorized transaction, I'll have the SEC on his doorstep. So fast he'll think he's back in that Greek jail he crawled out of. I ended the call before she could respond. Elena was staring at me. You're going nuclear. She lit the match. I'm just controlling the burn. I sat back down. Next call. Mitchell's sons. I want their steak pulled by noon. The day blurred into calls, emails, and the rhythmic click of Elena's keyboard. By 2 p.m., Sterling stock had dropped another 11%. By 4, 3 major vendors had suspended deliveries pending payment. By 5, Julian Vance had issued a statement denying all allegations and announcing his temporary leave from Sterling Global. And at 6:15, Victoria showed up at my apartment. I buzzed her up without comment. When the elevator doors opened, she looked like hell. No makeup, hair tangled, wearing the same dress from last night. She didn't speak, just walked in and sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. I stayed by the window, arms crossed. He's gone, she said finally, voice muffled. Julian, he cleaned out the petty cash and left. No note, just gone. Good riddance. She looked up, eyes red. You did this. You orchestrated this entire thing. I pulled my investors. That's all. Julian did the rest all by himself. You just handed him the shovel. I walked over, stopping a few feet away. You want to blame someone? Blame the man in the mirror, the one who chose a liar over the person who actually gave a damn. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I still love you. Ethan, I do. I was just confused. Julian was my past. I thought if I face him, I could finally let him go. But I was wrong. And now I've lost everything. You haven't lost everything, I said quietly. You've lost me. There's a difference. She stood abruptly, closing the distance between us. Her hands gripped my shirt. Desperate. Don't do this. Don't walk away. We can fix this. I'll step down from Sterling. We'll start over. Somewhere else. Boston, maybe, or Chicago. I peeled her fingers off, one by one. You don't get it, do you? I'm not a reset button. I'm not your safety net. And I'm sure as hell not your consolation prize. Please, she whispered. I'm begging you. Begging's not a good look on you. Victoria, it makes you look weak. And weakness? That's the one thing I can't tolerate. I step back. Elena's drawing up the dissolution papers for our joint assets. You'll have them by morning. The Hamptons house is already under contract. I suggest you find a new place to stay. She stared at me, chest heaving. You're a monster. No, I said. I'm the man you thought you could manipulate. Turns out, I manipulate better. I walked to the elevator and pressed a button. Doors that way. She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she gathered what was left of her pride and walked past me. As the elevator closed, I heard her whisper, I hope you rot. Ethan Cole. I smiled. Already there. My phone buzzed. Elena. Sterling's down 27%. Board's calling an emergency session for tomorrow. Want me to leak the Malta accounts? I type back. Wait. Let them squirm. Then drop it right after the opening bell. I poured myself a bourbon, neat, and toasted the empty room to choices and the consequences that follow. The Bloomberg terminal in my office didn't blink, but the red on Sterling Global's ticker was starting to look permanent. Elena walked in without knocking, tossing a folded Wall Street Journal onto my desk. Page 6, she said. They're calling it a leadership vacuum. Polite way of saying Victoria's drowning. I didn't pick up the paper. What's the damage? Down 34% since Monday. Trading volumes triple the average. Retail's panicking. And the institutional guys are bailing faster than we projected. She paused. Also, Julian Vance gave an interview to Forbes. Live. This morning. That got my attention. I swiveled the monitor toward me and pulled up the clip. Julian, sitting across from some wet behind the ears reporter, looking tan and polished, like he hadn't just fleeced his ex-fiancee's company. My priority is stabilizing the brand, Julian was saying, leaning back like he owned the place. Victoria and I have a history. Sure, but this isn't about us. It's about Sterling's future. And frankly, the company needs a steadier hand at the wheel. The reporter nodded. Some are saying your sudden departure last night was orchestrated by Ethan Cole, Victoria's former partner. Any comment? Julian smiled. That same smile I'd seen at the engagement party. Ethan's a talented guy, but he's emotional. This town runs on numbers, not feelings. I'm here to bring the focus back to fundamentals. I muted the video. Fundamentals. I repeated. He doesn't know the difference between EBITDA and a grocery receipt. Board meets in an hour. Elena said, rumors are voting on an interim CEO. Guess who's topping the list? Julian. Bingo. And Victoria's walking in there like she still has leverage. I stood, grabbing my jacket. We're going. Elena blinked. Thought you said you were done playing. I am. But I'm not letting that fraud near a boardroom without a witness. I checked my watch. Call Marcus. Tell him to meet us there. If Julian wants a masterclass in fundamentals, I'll give him one. The Sterling Global offices smelled like expensive perfume and cheaper fear. We breezed past security. My access still worked. And no one dared stop me. The boardroom doors were closed. But I could hear Victoria's voice inside, sharp and strained. With all due respect, Julian's return is premature. The company needs stability, not another headline. Stability? That was Richard Hale, the lead independent director. Victoria, you chose your engagement party to announce a personal crisis. The stock's in freefall. We need decisive action. I pushed the door open. Every head turned. Victoria froze mid-sentence, her eyes widening. Julian, seated at the far end of the table, didn't even flinch. He just smiled. Speak of the devil, he said. Ethan, come to bless the proceedings? I ignored him, addressing Hale directly. Richard, apologies for the interruption, but since we're discussing decisive action, let's talk facts. Victoria found her voice. Ethan, you can't just walk in here. I can. I still own 12% of this company, and I've got fiduciary duty to the remaining shareholders. I dropped a manila envelope on the table, including these. Hale frowned, pulling out the documents. His face paled as he flipped through them. These are the Malta transfers? Everyone, Elena said, stepping forward. Initiated by Julian Vance over the last 72 hours, totaling $4.2 million. Funneled through 3 shell companies before hitting an account linked to a company he incorporated last month, Vance Strategic Holdings. Julian's smile slipped. That's a lie. Those funds were for a potential acquisition. An acquisition you never cleared with legal. I cut in, or with Victoria, or with this board. You forged a signature on the wire request. Julian, we've got the handwriting analysis. And the server logs showing you access the transfer portal from Victoria's office at 2 a.m., right after she fell asleep. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Victoria looked at Julian, her expression crumbling. You told me you were working on a merger in London. I was, Julian said, but his voice lacked conviction. This is just a misunderstanding. Ethan's twisting the narrative. Am I? I pulled up the video on my phone. Sophie's security footage from the Hamptons house. I didn't play the audio, just the visuals. Julian entering the bedroom. Victoria following. The timestamp 8:03 p.m. Tuesday. This was the night you told me you were in Boston. Victoria working late. Remember? Her face went white. She looked at Julian, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw something other than desperation in her eyes. It looked like clarity, and it looked like it hurt. Is this true? She whispered. All of it? Julian didn't answer. He just stood, smoothing his tie. This is a witch hunt, and I won't be part of it. He headed for the door. I didn't stop him. I didn't need to. Marcus stepped into the doorway, blocking his path. My father didn't say a word. He just held up his phone, showing the screen to Julian. Whatever was on, it made Julian's shoulders slump. SEC's already been notified, Marcus said, his voice gravel. They'll be contacting you shortly. Mr. Vance, I'd advise against leaving the country. Julian pushed past him anyway, disappearing down the hall. The board members exchanged glances. Hale cleared his throat. Victoria, given the circumstances, we're going to have to ask for your temporary resignation as CEO, effective immediately. She didn't argue, didn't cry. She just stood, perfectly still, and nodded once. Then she walked out, not looking at anyone, not even me. I turned to Hale. You'll need an interim CEO, someone who understands the company's actual value, not its PR spin. I've got a list of 3 candidates. Elena will send it over. I paused, and I'll be exercising my rights as a major shareholder to oversee the transition for the sake of transparency. Hale nodded, relieved. Of course. Thank you, Ethan. I walked out before he could say more. Found Victoria in the lobby, staring at the floor-to-ceiling windows. She didn't turn when I approached. You knew, she said quietly, about Julian, about all of it. I suspected, Sophie confirmed. I kept my voice neutral. You made it easy, Victoria. You handed him the keys and then acted surprised when he drove the car off a cliff. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were dry, but hollow. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? Or would you have accused me of sabotage? Again, I stepped closer. You didn't want the truth. You wanted a story where you were the victim, where Julian was your tragic past, and I was your safe future. But real life doesn't work like a TED Talk. Victoria, I loved you, she said, and for the first time, it sounded less like a plea and more like confession. I do love you, but I was terrified you'd leave me, like everyone else. So I clung to the one person I thought I could control, my past, because the past can't walk away. Not unless you let it. I'm not your past. I said, I'm your present, and I'm walking away because you let me go the second you chose him. I pulled an envelope from my jacket, dissolution papers, clean break, no alimony, no shared assets. Sign them, and we're done. She took the envelope, fingers trembling. You're really going to erase me. I'm really going to stop cleaning up your messes. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. The night before the party, when you called me from Boston, I stayed up until 4 a.m. modeling the European expansion. I thought I was building a future for us. Turns out, you were building one with him. I didn't wait for her response. I walked out of Sterling Global for the last time. Elena at my side. What now? She asked as we hit the sidewalk. Now, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from a Boston area code. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're available. Dinner next week? Catherine Winthrop. Catherine, Harvard Business School. Sharp as a tack. Zero tolerance for bullshit. Exactly what I needed. Now, I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. We build something that doesn't need fixing. Elena smirked. About time. I didn't look back at the Sterling building. There was nothing left there worth seeing, except maybe the wreckage. And even that was starting to bore me. The subpoena landed on Victoria's desk at 7 a.m. I know, because Elena texted me the photo 10 seconds later. Sterling v. Vance. Filed in Southern District. Fraud. Conversion. Breach of fiduciary duty. Standard stuff. Except the plaintiff wasn't Victoria Sterling. It was Sterling Global, now under the control of the interim board I'd helped install. I scrolled down. My name wasn't on it. Not yet, but I'd fed the attorneys everything they needed. Sophie's records, the Malta transfers, the Hampton security footage. Even the forged wire request Julian had been sloppy enough to leave in the system. Elena called while I was pouring coffee. She's lawyering up. Hired that pit bull from Davis Polk, Rebecca Moss. You know her? Intimately. I said. She tried to sue me back in 21 over a hostile takeover in Philly. Lost. Badly. I took a sip. Victoria's making a statement this morning. 9 o'clock. Outside the courthouse. You going? No, but I want the transcript on my desk by 10. I paused. And Elena? Have legal draft a letter to the SEC. Inform them that Cole Ventures is formally requesting an investigation into Sterling's internal controls during Julian's tenure. Specifically, the board's failure to supervise. That'll bury her. It'll bury the version of her that thought she could play both sides. I ended the call and checked my calendar. Breakfast with Catherine Winthrop at 8:30. First date in 6 months. I wasn't looking forward to it. But Marcus had been relentless. You mope around like a kick dog. Get laid or get a hobby. Preferably both. Catherine was waiting at the restaurant, already seated, already scanning a prospectus. She didn't stand when I approached. Good. Ethan, she said, not looking up. You're late. For minutes. For minutes is late. She closed the folder and finally met my eyes. Sharp, gray, assessing. Heard about Sterling. Nasty business. Business usually is. True, she signaled the waiter. I ordered you the usual. Black coffee. Over easy eggs. No toast. You eat like a man who doesn't trust carbs. I don't trust anything I can't quantify. She almost smiled. I like that. She leaned forward. So, are we here because your father thinks you need a distraction? Or because you actually want to see if I'm as much of a bitch as the rumors say? Both, I said, but mostly the latter. Fair. She sipped her water. Victoria Sterling called me last night. Asked if I'd represent her in the civil suit against Julian. I didn't react. And I said no. Not because she's guilty, though she is, by omission, but because she's toxic. I don't represent clients who confuse their personal lives with their PL statements. She studied me. She also asked about you. Wanted to know if we were involved. What did you tell her? That it's none of her goddamn business. Catherine tilted her head. She sounded wrecked. Ethan, not angry, not scheming, just empty. You really did a number on her. She did it to herself. Maybe, she shrugged, but revenge is a calorie-dense meal. Leaves you feeling heavy after. You planning on digesting it forever? I held her gaze. I'm planning on moving on. Good answer. She glanced at her watch. Eat your eggs. I've got a 9:30 with a client in Midtown. And Ethan? Next time, pick a woman who doesn't need a rescue. Or a eulogy. She left before the food arrived. I ate alone, scrolling through the morning news. Sterling stock had halted trading pending an SEC investigation. Julian Vance was trending on Twitter, #FraudVance. And Victoria, there she was, outside the courthouse, surrounded by cameras, pale, composed, reading from a prepared statement. I take full responsibility for my lapse in judgment regarding Mr. Vance's appointment. However, I categorically deny any involvement in the financial misconduct currently under investigation. I intend to cooperate fully with authorities. She looked small, smaller than I'd ever seen her. And for a split second, just one, I felt something twist in my gut. Not regret, something closer to pity. Then it passed. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost declined, but answered out of habit. Ethan, Victoria's voice. Raw, stripped of polish. I saw Catherine Winthrop leaving Balthazar. You moved on that fast? I moved on 3 days ago. You're just noticing now. Silence. Then I'm being sued. Ethan, by my own company. The board froze my accounts. I can't pay my legal fees. I can't. I don't have anywhere to go. You have a dozen friends in the city who'd kill to host you. Pick one. None of them are you. A shaky breath. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to not destroy me. The SEC investigation. If they find anything, tie me to Julian's theft, I'll lose my license. I'll never work in this town again. You should have thought about that before you let him into the server room, before you let him into our bed. I kept my voice level. You made your choices. Victoria, now you live with them. I loved you, she whispered. I still do. I was just scared you'd realize I wasn't enough, that you'd leave. So I held on to the one person I thought I could keep. I didn't leave. I said, you pushed me, and then you slammed the door. I paused. The SEC investigation will conclude based on evidence, not my opinion. But for what it's worth, Sophie's testimony clears you of direct involvement in the theft. You're guilty of stupidity, not fraud. She started crying. Quiet, broken sobs. I waited until she quieted. Signed the dissolution papers. I said, take the settlement. Walk away. And Victoria, don't call me again. I hung up, blocked the number. Then I dialed Elena. SEC letter sent? Just filed, she said. Also, Julian Vance was arrested this morning, 8:50 a.m. Grand larceny. Securities fraud. They're leading him out of his apartment building now. Good. I watched a pigeon land on the windowsill. Leaked the arrest to CNBC. Right after the market closes. Done. And Ethan? The Boston offer came through. Winthrop Capital wants you to head their New England division. Start date's flexible. I thought about Catherine's words. Pick a woman who doesn't need a rescue. Maybe the same applied to cities, to jobs, to lives. Tell them I'll take it. I said, start date, 3 weeks. I need to wrap up loose ends here. Loose ends like Victoria. Loose ends like Sterling Global's asset liquidation. I want our stakes sold to a blind trust by Friday. I don't want a single dollar of that company touching my ledger ever again. Understood. She paused. You okay? It was the first time Elena had asked me that. Ever. I looked at the empty seat across from me, the one Catherine had occupied, at the city beyond the glass, at the wreckage I'd left behind. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. I'm free, and for the first time in weeks. It didn't sound like a lie. Logan Airport smelled like jet fuel and recycled air. Elena handed me a coffee, black, no sugar, and a thin manila envelope. Last of it, she said. Sterling's assets are liquidated. Your name's off every ledger. The SEC closed the investigation on Victoria this morning. No charges. Rebecca Moss made sure of that. I nodded, sipping the coffee. It was bitter, perfect. And Julian pleaded guilty to 3 counts of wire fraud. Sentencing's in 6 weeks. Moss says he'll get 3 to 5, but with good behavior. Maybe out in 2. She paused. Victoria's moving back to Boston. Her mother's place in Beacon Hill. Sold the penthouse. The Hamptons house. Everything. Rumor is she's taking a teaching fellowship at Harvard Business School. Part-time. Good for her. I said, meaning none of it. Elena studied me. You never asked about the settlement money. The 20 mil from the asset split. I signed it over to Sophie. I said, consider it a finder's fee. Her eyebrows lifted. Generous. Practical. She knew where the bodies were buried. She deserved the shovel. I checked my watch. Flight to San Francisco boarded in 40 minutes. You'll handle the transition at Winthrop? Already briefed Catherine. She said to tell you, don't screw up the Boston office. Her words, not mine. Elena almost smiled. You know, for a guy who just burned down his entire life. You look lighter. I am. I set the coffee down. New city, new title. No ghosts. No ghosts. She echoed, then, quieter. You ever wonder what would have happened if she'd chosen you that night? I looked at her, really looked at her. Elena had been with me since the beginning, back when we were both eating ramen and pitching to VCs in converted garages. She knew the answer. She didn't. I said, that's the only version that matters. She nodded, accepting it. We stood there in silence until my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Boston area code. I stared at it for 3 rings before declining. Then I blocked it. That her? Elena asked. Doesn't matter. I picked up my carry-on. Walk with me to security? Can't. Got a 10 o'clock with legal. She squeezed my shoulder. Brief but firm. Don't be a stranger. Ethan. And try not to break the next one. No promises. I walked through TSA pre-check, past the gift shops and the overpriced newsstands, and onto the plane. Window seat. I didn't open my laptop. Didn't check email. I just watched the tarmac until the engines roared and the ground fell away. 6 months later, I was in Palo Alto, sitting in a corner office that didn't feel like mine yet. The California sun was too bright, the air too dry. I missed the bite of a New York winter, missed the anonymity of a crowded subway car. Here, everyone wore hoodies and talked about disruption like it meant something. Catherine called once a week. Strictly business. Until it wasn't. Stop brooding into your bourbon, she said during one such call. It's unbecoming. Also, Victoria Sterling speaking at the HBS Alumni Conference next month. Topic: Ethical Leadership in Crisis. Ironic. No, not really. I said, people love a redemption arc, especially one they don't have to live through. You could come, show the flag for Winthrop, make nice with the Boston crowd. I could, I said, but I won't. She sighed. You're impossible. You knew that when you hired me. After I hung up, I scrolled through the news. Sterling Global had been acquired by a private equity firm, rebranded as SG Partners. Victoria's name was nowhere in the press release. Smart. She was learning. Then, 3 days before Christmas, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. Victoria and me, 2 years ago, at a charity gala in Boston. She was laughing, head thrown back, hand on my arm. I remember that night. She'd just closed a deal with the mayor, and we'd celebrated with terrible champagne in a hotel suite overlooking the common. For a moment, she looked genuinely happy. Not the CEO, just Victoria. On the back, in her precise, slanting script, I hope she makes you happier than I ever could. V. I stared at it for a long time. Then I slid it into my desk drawer, beneath a stack of unread reports. Not because it hurt, because it didn't. Not anymore. That night, I met Catherine for drinks in Menlo Park. She was early, already on her second martini. You look like hell, she said. Jet lag. I lied. Boston to San Francisco does that. Liar. She nudged a glass toward me. Drink. Then tell me why you're still carrying around a ghost from a city you claim to hate. I took a sip. The gin was floral, expensive. Nothing like the bourbon I use to drink in New York. She sent a photo. I said, finally. Old one. Us. Before everything. And I put in a drawer. I met her eyes. Next to the key to the Hamptons house. And the stock certificate from Sterling's IPO. And the napkin she wrote our first date's address on. Catherine was quiet for a beat. Then she laughed, short, sharp, genuine. Christ, Ethan, you're not over her. You're just organized about it. Maybe. I shrugged. Or maybe I'm just done letting other people's choices define my peace. She studied me, then raised her glass. To peace. Then, even if it's boring as hell, to peace. I echoed. Later, walking back to my apartment, I passed a bookstore. In the window, a display for Victoria's new book, The Cost of Choice, Lessons on the Edge of Collapse. Her face on the cover was older, wiser, the edges softened. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at something just past it. I didn't go in, didn't buy a copy. I just kept walking, my breath fogging in the cool California air. Sometimes, I still dream about her. In the dreams, she doesn't choose Julian. She looks at me across a crowded room, and her eyes are clear. And she says my name like it means something. In the dreams, I reach for her, and then I wake up, alone, in a bed that's too big, in a city that's too new. But the pillow isn't wet, and the sun rises without her. That's the thing about revenge, about walking away, about choosing yourself. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like silence, like an empty room after the shouting stops, like a city that doesn't know your name. It feels like peace. And after loving Victoria Sterling, peace was the only thing I had left to save. I reached my building, punched in the code, and stepped into the lobby. The doorman nodded. Evening. Mr. Cole. Evening. Marcus. I said, then paused. Realized what I'd said. My father's name. A ghost in a borrowed face. I didn't correct him, just smiled, faintly, and headed for the elevator. Upstairs. I poured a glass of water. No ice. Checked my phone. One new email. From an unfamiliar address. Victoria. Sterling at HBS. EDU. Subject line. Thank you. I deleted it without opening. Then I walked to the desk, opened the drawer, and looked at the photograph one last time. Her laugh, frozen in ink. My hand, resting on hers. A moment that felt real. Once, I closed the drawer, locked it, turned off the light, and slept